Being recognized this year as a Hope After Loss Compassionate Care awardee is a real full circle moment for me. It was just over a decade ago when I first heard about Hope After Loss, or at that point in time, it was better known as HYGEA. And that was during my neonatal fellowship at Yale. And perhaps naively at that point in time, I thought I was going into training so that I could learn how to save babies, how to make babies well enough so that they could go home with their families. Only to recognize through my early part of my training that unfortunately, not all of these babies do go home. And it was through my interactions with board members at Hope After Loss, after I was invited to join that board, as well as with the Hope After Loss community and the patients that I was caring for in the newborn intensive care unit, that I began to really understand just how important and critical it was to my training to learn how to care for those families who were facing or who had experienced a loss. And it was through my time in training and my early time spent with Hope After Loss that I recognized how much I wanted that type of work to be a part of my future career. And so now, as a practicing neonatologist and as someone who routinely engages with families who are facing life-limiting or life-threatening conditions that are diagnosed during their pregnancies, I have this unique opportunity to interact with families during really critical time periods to help navigate that difficult journey right alongside them. But I certainly don't do this work alone. It takes a village, and I'm lucky to have one at Yale involved with our palliative care program, where we can do just that for families, working together to help them navigate difficult choices about their pregnancy, about the care after their pregnancy, and helping families to honor the pregnancy as well as their child, no matter how long that child is here with us. And truly, what's at the core of all of my interactions with these families is compassion. Showing compassionate care to them during these really vulnerable times. Families that I meet as part of our perinatal palliative care program weren't often expecting this sort of diagnosis. And so when they receive this news and they're trying to figure out answers and trying to determine plans, I think that being compassionate, taking the time to spend with families to understand what's important to them, what are their hopes for their infant, what are their worries about their infant, can help them navigate this difficult journey. And if there's one thing that I've learned from the families that I interact with, whether it be in the hospital or families that I interacted with previously through Hope After Loss, is that the words we say, the actions we take as providers for these families matter. And these words and these actions stay with families and really set them on that journey for healing after these devastating losses. And so with that understanding, I've tried to approach my practice in such a way that I always think about that family first and think about that role of the parent, and that they won't get to parent in the way that they had initially thought. And so when I'm first meeting these families, one of the things that I always try to do is to ask if they've thought of a name for their baby and if they'd be willing to share it with me. I ask about how they came up with that name. What's the meaning behind it for them? I also talk to parents and families about how they're celebrating the rest of their pregnancy, even when they know that that pregnancy may not result in bringing a baby home. Because still celebrating that pregnancy and honoring that life is valuable to them. As I continue to engage with these families over consultations that take place over the remainder of their pregnancy, we work together to determine a plan for what that time will look like after their baby is born. How do they want to spend that time? Who do they want there at the time of delivery or afterwards? What sorts of memory-making activities do they find would be helpful to them? I find that families don't often know exactly what that time can look like. And so it's important that we as providers try to determine what's important to them and work together to make that time, however long it may be, as memorable as possible for those families.